Welcome to Moral Politics. I'm your host, Bill Wolford. Christians have a saying, hate the sin, not the sinner. Apply that wisdom to Israel, a clear racist and genocidal nation. Difficult. Any criticism of Israel, not so mysteriously, becomes criticism of Jews in general. The Israel lobby will smear any critic as an anti-Semite. Just recall the treatment given Jimmy Carter and Helen Thomas. I'm joined by Dr. Ibrahim Saudi. We will probe so-called new anti-Semitism, a political ploy to silence Americans and insulate Israel from criticism. It is my pleasure to welcome returning guest to Moral Politics, Dr. Ibrahim Saudi. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you think that Americans are silenced? Do you think that maybe there's fear of anti-Semitism?
Americans are actually living under what I call a mental psychological occupation. The threat of being called anti-Semite has been used very effectively to silence any criticism by Americans to Israel.
Well, it's interesting because I know an author who's very, very timid and concerned about how his family and friends will perceive him after his book is published, which is on Israel, a rather in-depth, truth-telling book. I also know an activist locally that has mentioned that people have what looks like a morbid fear of speaking out about Israel. Do you see that as well?
You see it everywhere you go. Americans are willing to speak up their mind only in private and in a very timid way, and it's hard to understand where is that. Why is that? Why are Americans so afraid to speak up in their own country?
Well, whatever it is, it's working. It's immunizing Israel definitely from criticism.
It's a huge threat to any American to be called anti-Semite.
When we talk about anti-Semitism, are we talking about traditional anti-Semitism, or are we talking about this new, so-called new anti-Semitism?
It meant originally to be hating the Jews or to be racist against the Jews. Today, it's actually used more as a weapon by the supporters of Israel to silence any criticism of Israel, whether it's justified or unjustified.
Well, you know, it's almost kind of like a shell game. Some writer wrote that and said that, you know, it's in one instance it's a religion, it's a culture, you know, it's an ethnicity. No, it's a religion, and that what is it?
Yeah. That's. I think you're referring to Michael Newman's article in I think 2004 it was, where he himself is a Jew and he's somehow confused about what exactly are we talking about when we talk about new anti-Semitism. Are we disliking a culture? Are we disliking a religion? Are we disliking a political school of thought?
We know there's definitely a tripwire that, you know, you're an anti-Semite whether you equate Israel with the Jews or not equating Israel with the Jews.
Actually, talking to Jewish people, you will find several camps within that sense. That some will tell you criticize Israel and the Zionists, but don't criticize the Jews. And then some others will tell you once you criticize Israel, then you are criticizing the Jews, and so on. So the lines have been blurred quite a bit.
It can mean anything from just unfriendliness towards Jews. Is there a problem with that?
Oh, absolutely, because disliking something or disagreeing with something about the behavior of Israel should not automatically be looked at as hatred for the Jews. I think this is just too much of an exaggeration, if you will. And you stand up anywhere in America on the street and carry a sign or say something critical of the Israeli actions. The first thing that some people will call you if they pass by and see you, that you are a Nazi or an anti-Semite, or name calling is very common. Whether it's really based on truth or not, it doesn't really matter.
But when that definition is really broad and encompasses everything, then we have what we call inflation of meaning.
Which naturally translates into devaluing, if you will, of the original thing.
Silencing people using this weapon, anti-Semitism, is going to deny the reality that it's just a kinder, or it may not even be a kinder, gentler genocide going
Well,
on.
absolutely, and thank God that with today's technology and the awareness of people globally, many Israelis themselves are talking about the need to stop the actions of the Zionists in Israel. Europeans are speaking out. And more Americans are also becoming aware of the issue.
Well, let me give you a scenario. You meet an Israeli, and they say that it's fundamental to being an Israeli, to being a Jewish Israeli, that you have settlements. How do you respond?
Saying that the Israeli settlements are part of the Jewish dream is not just a one-side story. You have to look also at the other side. And unless you look at this thing, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict will continue forever. And it will be a flashpoint for much bigger problems in the Middle East.
Well, you're talking about the old double bind. If I support the Israeli claim that settlements are necessary, then I have to deny the Palestinians their right not to be snuffed out of existence or to be treated barbarically.
It's a different format of ethnic cleansing.
Is there any evidence today of traditional anti-Semitism, people hating Jews for being Jews?
Well, look in America here, and you will find the number of the Jewish people is almost about 1.6, 1.7% of the population, but actually 33% of the seats of the highest court in the land are filled by Jews. Well, that tells me that they are quite privileged in America here, and the sense of original anti-Semitism certainly does not exist. And also look at the most powerful political lobby in the United States. It's the Jewish lobby called AIPAC. So the issue of traditional anti-Semitism, I think, is used more, like we said, as a weapon to silence people, rather than actually a reality on the ground.
It's these Jewish organizations that seem to be the source of this so-called reports of anti-Semitism. You know, we hear the swastikas on the school wall story over and over again. And we hear about people waving a Hamas or Hezbollah flag, or being for the PLO, or comparing Israel to the Nazis or South Africa. Is that really what you would call anti-Semitism?
You can't just say that Israel can do whatever it wants to do and should not be criticized because we will consider that to be anti-Semitism. I think that that's completely misuse, if you will, or a clever use of the expression to silence criticism of Israel.
Well, these organizations, the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, B'nai B'rith, and the Wiesenthal Center, actually do sponsor a lot of forums on anti-Semitism. You would think that there's a lot of it, but even the Pew Research Center, a very reputable organization, agreed with Norman G. Finkelstein that there's very little evidence for any traditional anti-Semitism today.
Oh, absolutely. But those organizations you are referred to, they do their business, they do their living by creating that fear of traditional anti-Semitism.
It's all about fundraising, all about big salaries.
Yeah, it's a good material to use. You know.
But still, this support for Israel, this sensitivity to anti-Semitism should never trumpet morals.
And it's not just moral, it's also practical, because the mistakes or the crimes that the Israelis are committing are costing America dearly, both inside America and outside America.
What about the evidence today for so-called new anti-Semitism? We mentioned earlier Jimmy Carter and Helen Thomas.
Well, those are the most famous examples of if you dare criticize Israel for whatever thing, even justifiably, we will just name you anti-Semite, and that might be the end of your career, like what happened to Helen Thomas. In fact, I'm just surprised that many people in America here talk about freedom of speech and so on, and I'm yet to see a mainstream program on the American media to invite Helen Thomas to actually speak about her story, because they will also be accused of being anti-Semite.
So it's all about delegitimizing people that criticize Israel.
This is the main philosophy now of the Israel First camp. Their main way of protecting Israel now is what they call delegitimize the delegitimizers. Yeah.
And they also try to discredit the sources, and they also try to discourage those people that have a conscience, that have moralities, that see great wrong taking place from ever speaking out.
It's what I call the mental psychological prison that the Americans have been living under when it comes to the Israeli issue.
Now, you know, the ADL has its top 10 list of most anti-Semitic organizations, and you have to have good sponsorship, you have to have a good discourse, you have to have good recruitment, and you have to really basically be a threat to the story that they're putting out, the one-sided support for Israel.
Yeah, amazingly, actually, they include on that top 10 list Jewish Voices for Peace. So the people have become now so committed to their cause, even if it's wrong, that they are actually willing to even accuse their fellow Jews of being a threat to Israel.
Well, this has taken a new twist just recently. The Stand With Us organization, those bullies, have tried to shut down the Jewish Voices of Peace in San Francisco.
Yeah,
just in the news.
Yeah, they went to that meeting in San Francisco by Jewish Voices for Peace, and they pepper sprayed people in the meeting and attacked them physically. And as far as I know, some lawyers are actually volunteering to defend or to sue the members of Stand With Us and other organizations.
So taking a stance for peace. And this is what some of the junkyard dogs for Israel will do to
Well,
you.
absolutely, yeah. Because to them it's a life-threatening, it's an existential threat, if you will, that Israel be criticized.
But the smear does take a toll. You know, people have to worry about their reputation. They have to worry about their family. They have to worry about perception among their friends.
It is very real, and in my talking to the American people in private, I have never seen them more afraid to talk about subject than to criticize Israel.
Well, they saw what happened to Jimmy Carter and Helen Hunt.
Others too. There are people who lost their jobs just because they dared to speak up, and even a former U.S. Congresswoman who lost her position in the Congress because AIPAC aligned itself, and that very much explains why the members of the U.S. Congress, whether it's the House or the Senate, are totally for whatever Israel asks for, even if it was against the interests of the United States of America itself.
Yeah, we have Eric Cantor as in the news example of that.
That's another story by himself. He's conducting his own private American foreign policy with the Prime Minister of Israel, and now he is trying to move the U.S. aid to Israel from being a foreign aid to being part of the Pentagon's budget, so that it does not get touched when the budget cuts are coming in America. This is really surreal, actually, and no wonder that many people in the Middle East call it the United States of Israel, not the United States of America.
But let's talk about a cause and effect relationship here. I mean, this so-called Arab anti-Semitism, and again, so-called, it's really just resentment of what the behavior is, isn't it?
Israel is committing and has been committing war crimes and ethnic cleansing for almost 70 years or maybe even more. And to tell me that the Arab people will stand by watching that and not feeling that Israel is doing something wrong is just not logical.
Do you think that if the Zionist threat and expansionism abated or ceased, that
absolutely,
the resentment towards Israel would abate as well?
If Israel started to behave according to international laws and give back the land that it took by force and respected the human rights and the rights of return for the Palestinians and so on, I think the world will be much better than it is now, and there will the perceived anti-Semitism that some of them believe in will not exist.
But that, I mean, they'd have to give up Zionism, which is all about, you know, a land without people for a people without land, which we know now is not true.
Well, it just happened to be an inaccuracy, and they have been trying to correct it by wiping off the Palestinian people that they found in that land that was without people, according to their own understanding.
Well, you know, George Soros, the billionaire, who has a lot to do with MoveOn.org and a whole lot of other support groups, as well as a former head of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, have agreed that it's Israel behavior, it's the Sharon policies, according to their quote, that are the cause of resentment. It's boomeranging on Israel.
Unless American unqualified support to Israel is looked at carefully by the American people. The American people need to break that mental, psychological prison that they have been put in. America is an Israeli-occupied territory mentally, psychologically.
The way the Palestinians are physically.
Yeah, the Palestinians are occupied by military force and physical presence. The Americans are occupied in the mind and in the psyche.
Well, for the viewer's sake, we can conclude here certainly that to be against the crimes of Israel is not to be against the Jewish people.
Absolutely.
Anymore, to be against the mafia is to be against Sicilians.
Disagreeing with some aspects of the U.S. foreign policy does not translate automatically to be anti-Americanism.
But you know, a lot of the apologists for Israel have given up denying all of those war crimes and criminality of that state. They just hint that, you know, mentioning it is a little bit anti-Semitic. How culpable are Israel supporters?
Oh, they are definitely a big part of the problem, because if you finance a crime, then you are part of the crime. If you know that a crime has been committed or is being committed and you remain silent, then you are also part of the crime itself. So I think they are actually a big part of the problem. And their success in America here is one of the main reasons that Americans need to speak up. Because those people are going to destroy not only themselves, but they are going to destroy Israel itself. They are going to destroy America unless Americans wake up and put some wisdom into put the brakes on a little bit in this madness of the Zionists. Yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of the Jewish moral texts say the same thing, that passive consent, by refusing to see horror, by refusing to oppose it, refusing to speak out, is wrong.
Oh,
it's what happened to the Jews with the Nazis.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
But let's get back to the support for Israel. America is really the skeleton that supports Israel, and we would have to say that American Jews are the backbone that gives the support to Israel.
The silence of most Americans, or the fear of most Americans to speak up against the actions of Israel, is also something that Americans need to take a good look at.
But, you know, according to, again, the author Michael Newman, he says that the majority of American Jews are not speaking out because the majority of American Jews actually support Israel.
You have to look at the psyche of the Jewish people themselves. To them, the horrors of the Inquisition or the pogroms in Russia or the Holocaust in Germany makes them always feel that somebody out there in the world is waiting to commit the next one. And to them, Israel will be the fortress that they will run to in order to be saved. That's where the expression "never again" came from.
The perpetrators see themselves as the victim.
Yeah, but this is one way to convince yourself that there is nothing to worry about, and since the Nazis have done that to us, then we have now an excuse to go and do it to somebody else, especially since we were told that it's a land without people. So sorry, we just found that there are Palestinians actually there, and we will correct the simple mistake by gradually and systematically, ethnically cleanse them.
You know, the overwhelming majority of Israelis were for the attack on the Gaza flotilla. They just, you know, really had a parade for their commandos. And
the university students went out and celebrated and so on. And but that's again part of the mindset of the Israelis, or many of them, is that the world will not leave them alone, and if it's not going to harm them outside the Middle East, it's going to send someone to harm them inside the Middle East.
Well, they're almost in a kind of state of denial where they don't really know the consequences of the occupation and the stagnation inflicted upon the Palestinians. They don't know about the arrest warrants for some of their leaders.
I think they are gradually actually building a prison for themselves within the Middle East itself. Like they have been now almost totally isolated from everywhere else in the world except America. And more and more Americans now are waking up. And you look at the BDS movement and the flash mobs that happen within many shops. And
people are willing to overcome their fear.
And the younger generations in America here are not confined by that mental prison that was built over the last 50 years or so. so. The younger generations are looking at the facts in front of them and saying, gee, if you suffered from the Holocaust, which is true, and then you now have your own country and you are trying to ethnically cleanse the people who have been living in it for hundreds and hundreds of years, then there must be something wrong with what you're doing. And I'm just not willing to accept it just because you want me to.
You would have to support a state that has a lot of the comparisons to South Africa, that basically opposes marriages between Israelis and Palestinians, that is basically on a path towards exclusionism, where, you know, get rid of the Gentile, that is about exclusive rights, that is, you know, looking at the Torah to justify some evil.
They have been for quite a while pushing the name Jewish state, which is just by definition actually a racial expression, because there are non-Jews living in that country. And now they have this oath of loyalty to that Jewish state, which is ridiculous in a way. Like, in fact, there are young Jews actually who demonstrated in a recent event for the Prime Minister of Israel in America here, and they told him that the settlements delegitimize Israel, the oath of loyalty delegitimizes Israel. So even young Jews themselves, many of them are not buying the old arguments of we are victims, and then that gives us the right now to ethnically cleanse other people.
Can Israel have peace?
Oh, absolutely. But it can't have peace, Zionism, and Judaism all in one package. Yeah, and also the land without the Palestinians. Like they have to make some choices.
Do they have to return to the 67 borders?
Well, no, I think the problem is bigger than that. I think the people who lost their homes in Palestine in 1947 and 1948, they also should have the right of return for them and their descendants. All the properties that were taken by force from the Palestinians should be returned to them. And if Israel claims to be a democracy, then you can't be an apartheid democracy. Mm-hmm. You're either a democratic state or you are a racist state, like you call yourself Jewish.
Well, when we look at the facts on the ground, we look at how the negotiations are forever stalled, and that basically they're establishing, you know, birthrights for the new generation of Jews to take so anybody with, you know, that can trace having one grandparent as Jewish can have the rights to go to Israel and take the homes of people
at the very time that the Palestinians are being destroyed. Yeah.
So, how optimistic are you? What is it really going to take? It's going to definitely take people overcoming this morbid fear of being labeled an anti-Semite.
I think the key actually is not in the hands of the U.S. government. The key now is in the hands of the American public. It's obvious that there is so much power now in America here that actually considers the interests of Israel before the interests of America itself. Look at the budget cuts in America. Look at how many people are losing their homes and their savings and so on and so forth. At the very time that the billions of dollars are flowing to Israel, not just through the official channels, but there are plenty of 501c3 organizations that collect tax deductible donations in America here, and then funnel
anywhere from $6 billion to $10 billion a year.
Well, I hear the numbers as far up as 20 billion, but I don't have a way of quantifying
all we're doing, we're abetting the genocide and the racism.
Absolutely, and there is nothing in the world increasing anti-Americanism and creating problems for America in security and
again, I want to point out that being against the crimes of Israel is not anti-Jewish any more than being against the mafia is anti-Sicilian.
Absolutely.
If you don't oppose it, you'll have more crime.
Absolutely, yeah. And America, unfortunately, is the one paying for those crimes. The war in Iraq, now the push for the war in Iran, are driven by people who put Israel first. And you have the Israeli general consul here in the Northwest is openly campaigning for war against Iran.
Yeah, a dignitary, an official of
a foreign power is actually campaigning for war against Iran in the United States. It's just amazing.
I actually attended that. I was shocked. Okay. You're familiar with Jeff Halper, very well known in the peace circles, the director of the coalition opposing house demolitions. There have been 20,000 Palestinian homes demolished in Israel. Collective punishment, it's just gone amok. He said that the Israelis can't solve their problem. He calls for Americanizing the issue. By that he means it's not a Jewish issue alone, whether you're for Israel or opposing what Israel is doing. It's all Americans that have got to overcome that morbid fear of anti-Semitism and be strong and stand by their principles and speak out.
Yeah, I think the key is in the hands of the American people themselves, and they can do it very peacefully, and they should not think that they are doing it for the sake of someone else. They are actually doing it for their own sake before anything else, because there is nothing that's increasing anti-Americanism in the Middle East and in the rest of the world than the unbelievable misbehavior of Israel and then the unqualified protection of the United States to that behavior.
Desmond Tutu had a very interesting expression, polishing the chains of your captivity. That's if you were just giving aid but not really addressing the political forces that cause the problem, which is really what we want viewers to get tonight. You've got to stand up. You've got to speak up. You've got to overcome that so-called weapon of anti-Semitism. Speak out. Take back the language. Take back our morals here. And let's bring peace and justice and universal human rights for everyone in the Middle East.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there any escaping the fact that what's going on in Israel with Zionism is racism?
Oh, absolutely not. Like I said, just the insistence that it's called Jewish state, and then having people who are not Jews living in Israel having to go through the oath of loyalty. This is something I'm like puzzled by and surprised that people are allowed to do that kind of stuff, and there is no even criticism coming from the United States. There is criticism against that in Israel itself by Israelis, but there is no criticism from the United States of America.
And we know something is really wrong when we see Eric Cantor doing a Jewish member of the American Congress setting foreign policy for Israel, and there's all that money being transferred, and no traction. Obama has not been able to get any traction. So it's going to take the viewers, the American populace to speak out, overcome their morbid fear of this so-called anti-Semitism, which, as you so aptly put, is just a weapon. Dr. Ibrahim Sudi, I want to thank you again for a very wonderful discussion on this topic of timeliness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.